Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Coast to coast college football.
Oh, the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone. He's going to go out of there.
The sickest college football podcast.
There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game. Auburn's going to win the football game. He ran the missed field goal back. He ran it back 109 yards.
It's going to be sick.
That's right. It's the Sick Podcast, Coast to Coast College Football Show. I'm John Lund, the East Coast side. He's Dan Lynch, the West Coast transplant. Dan, it's the end of July as we record this, and of course, we're excited to bring to everyone yet another college football show. But we should let everyone know you've put on a different cap. Not only are you wearing one on video if people are watching, but you're now NFL Dan for a couple weekends here, dealing with what you have to do as part of your job as kind of a second motion since you live in Los Angeles, checking out training camps. Training camps, Dan, is alive and well as we get into college football season or closer to it.
Yeah, no doubt. Was checking out the LA Chargers last week in El Segundo.
With San Diego.
Yes. Let's make it very clear. The LA Chargers, they literally practice right outside of LAX. Like the planes are sort of flying over the entire time. But, so many college connections there with that team. Obviously, Harbaugh, the head coach over there. If you're a Michigan fan, you love him. If you're a college football fan, you absolutely hate him. But, they kind of have a college mentality with the Chargers. The practices were very loud, very fast moving. And, a bunch of really like high level picks there. I mean, Joe Alt might be the largest human being I've ever seen. Moves like a point guard. Omar in Hampton, very impressed with him. He was the running back out of UNC. And I brought this up earlier this week. The most impressive player there, obviously, Herbert, and, you see all the guys with the ones, but guy who went undrafted had a kind of a wild roller coaster career in college. DJ Uiagalelei.
Wow.
Balling with the twos, man. He's battling Trey Lance right now for that kind of, second, if that, but listen, he looked really good. I mean, deep balls were sharp, big kid. And yeah, I came away from practice being like, DJU, maybe the best thing that ever happened to him was just going to the NFL and being with NFL talent.
Yeah. Just getting away from the last couple of years of college where people were just looking at him as a bust, basically. Yeah. Although his wallet said otherwise every 2 weeks after him really taking advantage of the first iteration of NIL at Clemson and then forward from there. He did it pretty well when it comes down to it. He's a good blueprint for players. At least he was. Things have changed a little bit, but getting in on the ground floor like he was able to. Shout out DJU. And some guys, some guys, Trey Lance, DJ Uiagalelei. We're getting into it. The LA Chargers, of course, Justin Herbert, as we'll get into the Big Ten a little bit in this specific show, came out in red contact lenses, looking like a demon child, because apparently it helps him with the sun glare in Los Angeles. He said this is something he's trying out to avoid shadows and other things like that. So if that's a good way to have him become more of a feared-looking quarterback, since he's really a laid-back guy, maybe that'll do it. Red contact lenses, no visor. He's not a fan. So he's looking angry, at least for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Once I saw that, it reminded me of the Nike contacts from the early 2000s. Do you remember that? Like Mario Williams had them. He's probably the most famous player that I could remember wearing them. But kind of cool. I mean, we have talked behind the scenes about contacts. I can't figure out how to put contacts in. I failed the test multiple times at Lens Crafters. But hey, listen, man, if it's going to get you past the Chiefs in a very tough AFC West, then throw those bad boys in, dude. Throw them in. But yeah, he looked great too. Coming off, I probably one of his best careers last year, or stat wise. Yeah, he's a baller, man. I mean, I've been a big fan of him since the Oregon days when I was with the Pac-12. And he's a massive human being too. I think he I saw somewhere he grew like 7 inches since high school. Like
Sure.
what? Like how?
As one does.
Like, yeah, just grow. Yeah, you're good. All right. And then you get to the league, you're a baller. So yeah, Chargers.
Now he's on the Harbaugh diet, milk and steak.
Milk, steak,
filling those muscles the best way they can.
And pretzels. I feel like Harbaugh eats a lot of pretzels. He just always has those kind of around. But yeah, Harbaugh running it like a college camp. Listen, you still got to get past, like I said, the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, the Raiders have gotten better. That division is really, really, really good.
And
the Denver Broncos.
We're not an NFL show. Sorry, we don't have to get into.
Let's get back to the main course.
The Bo Nick strain, but again,
another Oregon quarterback. Another Oregon quarterback. That's it.
Oregon's getting a lot of love already. Before we even get into it, we mentioned Big Ten media days. All the media days now are wrapped up, and we've spoken Big 12. We've spoken SEC. I was getting ready for the show, diving into the Big Ten because they obviously warrant that with so many goddamn teams now, and completely forgot the ACC had their media days the same week. So we're going to hold off on them until next week's show, and we'll give a dive into the ACC and give them their just due. But unfortunately, they were an afterthought for me.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they're somewhat of an afterthought in college football, which they're trying to change. And we'll get into some of the discussion on how they're trying to do that with their commissioner and how they're looking at the college football playoff, which is something we've talked about now for several different shows on what commissioner wants to do what. And finally, Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti stepped up to the podium, talked to the reporters, and said, you know what? Everybody's talking about that 5-11, but what about this?
Dun, dun, dun.
He is in for the 4-4-2-2-1-3. They're pushing the 16-team playoff with multiple automatic qualifiers from power conferences. That would be 4 from the Big Ten and the SEC, 2 each from the ACC and Big 12. Birth of the highest-ranked Group of 6 champion with 3 at-large selections made by the CFP Selection Committee. And now we're talking about playing games.
We're talking play-ins?
Trying to get into the college football playoff. Playing games. Playing games. So we wondered what Tony Petitti's stance would be, and then whether or not Big Ten coaches would embrace such a philosophy. And embrace such a philosophy they seem to do. And Lincoln Riley had comments, of course, about what the USC Notre Dame future would be like. And he said apparently he got into coaching because of these rivalry games and growing up with them and how important they are to the sport, blah, blah. But if we have to play Notre Dame, maybe we could do it this way or that way, and it wouldn't hurt us as much, etc.
Yeah.
But on its face, what do you think? The Big Ten coming out now and saying 5-11 is what y'all are looking at and agreeing to. The Big 12 has already said they're on board with the SEC, but maybe this would benefit us the most as the Big Ten tries to go three-peat here when it comes to a national champion in 25-26.
4, 4, 4, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Rolls right off the tongue, yeah.
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind was, wow, Wendy's is going to cash in on that 4-for-4 deal, bro. Sign it right with the Big Ten. You heard it here first on the Coast to Coast podcast. But, that's where the future of the sport is going to. I think Tony Petitti, one that we just kind of got from him. I saw a picture from Big Ten Media Day in Vegas where there was a bunch of media around Ryan Day, and Tony Petitti was kind of just sitting on the side, just like looking at him. And I think a lot of media members forgot what he looked like. And then he came out and was like, hey, this is what we're actually doing here. They're cutting around. They're just going right to it. Why even mess around with these other formats for the 12-team playoff if we're just going to go to it? And Tony Petitti's trying to get ahead of the curve of it. I like it. I've said I've been a big fan of moving towards a 16-team playoff. I think it's going to be better for the entire sport. Viewer-wise, betting-wise, it's going to be so much fun. But with that being said, we still have to figure out the schedule leading up to it, the regular season schedule. And I think that's a conversation that kind of gets lost in this whole thing, is because, yes, it sounds great on paper. Oh, the playoffs can be sick, but when are we actually starting that? When's the season actually going to end? Are we still going to have this straight seeding format when we get there? Probably, right? But there's just so many questions going into it. I just want all the commissioners to get together, kumbaya, Come out with something that's going to work for everyone. And guess what? The ratings will still be up. There's still going to be a national championship champion. There's still going to be someone from one league that's going to win it all. But yeah, Tony Petitti, I remember what you look like now. And I just want to give a shout out to another character that we have on this show that we have not brought up in the last couple episodes. The on-air sign is back, Johnny Boy.
It's back, yeah. It comes
back,
and goes.
baby.
It's like a ghost is controlling it. So apparently it's a fan of the Big Ten and what they've done winning those national championships the last couple of years. So it's on. It's ready. We'll see what happens when we talk ACC next time, if it's still going to be lit. But it's on for the Big Ten at least. So good for them. It was interesting to hear a couple of coaches kind of dive a little bit deeper into it. I know James Franklin got to the podium and talked a little bit about 9 teams and how important it would be for college football to just become more of an even playing field when it comes to being able to look at, we're all playing 9 conference games. We're all trying our best to play the hardest teams. We're trying our best to have the best games in our conference and give the fans what they want and just make it a fairer and more even playing field by not having to have the discussion at the end of the season. Well, here's what our schedule looks like over here in the SEC. Well, here's what our schedule looks like in the Big Ten. Who has the strength of schedule advantage? And it just goes round and round and round. And you feel like it would just be better if all the conferences can decide, hey, 9 is the way to go. And whether or not that's next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, however long it takes, we know that COVID showed the world that you could easily change your schedule at the drop of a hat if you really want to. And this was something that conferences really strive to do. For me, it would just feel better as a fan of the sport if everybody was on that even playing field. So there would be less of something to complain about when it comes to the end of the college football playoff. Let's all get the conference games the same. Whether you have an easy year or a hard year based on how the schedule falls every season, that's not really up for debate. That's just kind of how the coin flips. But at least now we could all be in agreement for that. And we could focus on other things that are more important when it comes to the selection committee and what they have to talk about in the room. Because you just know this from being people. When you put too much information in front of people, they get overwhelmed. That's why when you go to college, you take a public speaking course, they tell you just 3 items, beginning, middle, end, just like you tell stories to children and write books. You don't want to have people too confused and give them too much info. Make it easy. Here we are. Here's the middle. Here's our conclusion, and move on. I think if they all do that, it would just not only be better for the sport, but for these folks at the end of the season to have an easier time making more difficult of a decision seemingly year after year. And it's not going to get easier with 16 if we get to that point. It's hard enough with 12. But you want to make it easier for these folks to just, here's what's in front of you on the papers. Here's what we all have. And we're trying to make it as compact of a thing to move forward. And hopefully that's a decision that everybody can agree on, because now it's just kind of under the breath. Coaches are for it, against it, and it's just becoming frustrating at this point because no one can really figure it out and how to make it equal.
Yeah, but also predicting schedules and the way things are going to work out in the transfer portal era are harder than ever. I mean, Florida State is a prime example. You know, barely missed the college football playoff the year before because of an injury, but going into last season, speaking of DJU, they brought him into Tallahassee, pretty good schedule ahead of them, and they won, I believe, 2 conference games. I mean, they were the preseason ACC darling last year. Yeah. So much hype around them. That schedule is going to impact Clemson's schedule to get into a playoff. I mean, we just don't know. So having a structured, 9 game. Let's talk about that before we get to the 4-4-4, 7-7-7-7. That just makes things way more simpler just because we just don't know. We don't know who the Indiana is going to be this year. There's going to be an Indiana that might not be, it's probably not going to be named Indiana again, but there's going to be an Indiana-like team that comes out of nowhere and we're like, how, what? They're a basketball school and they're balling. Like, there's so many different things, but if we make things more even along the conferences, again, this kumbaya, Brett Yormark, come from the rodeo, Tony Petitti, come down from, the plains of Minnesota, Jim Phillips, come off the beach of North Carolina, bring them all together Let's all talk. Greg Sankey, come up from the sands of beautiful. Where do they have spring meetings? Oh my gosh, something island.
Amelia Island.
Amelia Island. Come up from the sands and just all to get together and say 9, 9, 9, and then everything would be easier. But hey, we're moving towards a 16-team playoff. It's going to happen.
Seems to be where we're headed. And now discussions into Big Ten media days and moving forward, of course, are what teams will be the best. And the Big Ten, similarly to the Big 12, who decided they're not going to put out their own media preseason polls just because they got it so wrong the first time, and the second and the third 3 years ago. It just hasn't been great for the media picking who was going to be good in the Big 12, which says a lot about the conference in general. Adam Rittenberg, our good friend from ESPN, went around and talked to a couple of Big Ten coaches and officials in Las Vegas. And he basically said, hey, what do you think about the preseason polls? And a lot of them said they should be, quote, obliterated. They carry too much meaning and shape debate, overvaluing / undervaluing teams before we know anything. And we talked about that with the Big 12. Looking at that two ways where, of course, it does put too much pressure on said teams, but then the conferences go out and put their preseason rankings for their own players out, which the Big Ten also did with their Big Ten preseason honors list. So again, players are under the microscope for these conferences, although we're not doing it for the teams. So make it make sense, as they say. But it seems like the list that a lot of people are going off of, because they've put it out for the last several years. Cleveland.com puts out a Big Ten rankings. They talk to a lot of members of the media, and this year's poll had Penn State as the number one team in the Big Ten, just edging out Ohio State, the defending national champions. Oregon 3, also college football playoff team, of course. Illinois 4.
Yeah,
maybe they could be the Indiana for this year. A lot of people are big on the Illini. Michigan, Indiana, Iowa, Nebraska, USC, Washington in your top 10. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Rutgers, Michigan State tied for 13th. UCLA, Maryland, Northwestern, and Purdue rounding out the rear at 18, a number that I don't think anyone ever thought they would say for what a conference looks like. Vegas, similar in its likings to make the college football playoff. They have Ohio State minus 400, Penn State right behind at minus 350, Oregon minus 270, Michigan plus 200, USC plus 450, Illinois plus 500, Indiana plus 500, Nebraska plus 900, Washington plus 900. That's kind of how Vegas sees things. The media is seeing things their way. When you hear that list, are you in a similar thought process of a lot of pressure? It seems like it's going to be on Penn State and James Franklin again.
Yeah.
But last year showed that they are potentially going to come in with, if not the best roster in college football, maybe behind Texas. You got to mention them probably in the top 3 with all their returning. And I think they're hungry to prove to people that finally maybe we can get over the hump this year.
I think they had the best overall offensive line in the country. They have shown that they can move bodies. And what that does is set up Drew Aller, who might have one of the best deep balls probably in the country. I mean, listen, last year I believe he was hurt, so can't really go off of too many things, but when he's healthy, I think Drew Aller, might be my top pick in the draft next year. And that might,
and there were some games his wide receivers just didn't do him many favors. So that didn't help his numbers either. And in close games, that was something where you're just looking for your tight end over and over again. The best player on the field in most instances last season. But if everybody's sitting on that, somebody else has to make the play.
I was going to say, his safety blanket is kind of gone with Tyler Warren. I mean, I was at that USC game where the kid played like literally 900 positions all at once. But when he wasn't at quarterback and Aller was finding him pretty much everywhere, I mean, he was definitely a huge part of that offense. But they added a bunch of guys into their receiver room who could definitely fly down the field. But again, I think their heart and soul really is just that run game. And they might have the 2 best running backs and the best tandem in the country. But yeah, again, if not now, when James Franklin? he won a bunch of big games last year, but he can't get over that hump. I don't know if this is the year. I get it ranking them first. I probably would have ranked them first as well, but I don't know. There's just something still like I need to see it to believe it from him. Kind of like an LSU. They're just, hey, you guys have shown that you could get to that point, but could you do it again? Yeah, so they're there. The one team that I'm looking at and that a lot of people are not very high on, but coming in on Cleveland.com's preseason rankings, UCLA at 15. I would move them up at least to 11. And I know, listen, it's tough. You don't have the linemen that the rest of the Big Ten do, but you got Nico. And Nico is one of the best football players in the country. I think if you get a team around him who believes in him, kind of have this underdog mentality, this big chip on your shoulder coming into the season. Deshaun Foster, obviously, he made some funny jokes. Did you see at Media Day where he kind of walked in and said, "We're still in LA," if you remember his infamous first ever Media Day, which like he got the job like literally 2 weeks prior. So I'm not blaming him there, but yes, UCLA is still in LA. I like UCLA to be better than most people, just strictly off of Nico. They bring back a lot of great players on defense, and they bought into him last year. A lot of those guys who were fighting for positions last year, going into like the last couple 4 games of the season, they balled out for Deshaun Foster. So that's my only qual. UCLA should be moved up a little bit.
Vegas sees them only 5.5 wins plus 115. So if you think UCLA is at least getting to a bowl game, good odds to take their over for that to get to 6 wins. The 10.5 win teams, no surprise, Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State. They're all at plus 120 or plus 125. So you still have to give a little bit of juice for that. There's some other teams that are at 7.5 wins, several, I should say. Illinois is at 7.5 wins, Minnesota, Nebraska, USC, Washington. You've got 8.5 with Indiana, the darling of last year. Illinois, we mentioned 7.5 minus 160 for them. Iowa, 7.5 wins. They're looking at their Vegas number for that. And there's some fun ones. Purdue, which only had 1 win and was 0-9 in the Big Ten, 2.5. So if you want to go after those small numbers, Northwestern, which had 4 wins, 2-7 in conference last year, 3.5, but that's minus 180. So you might want to hope that they win one more game for you. But that's just a little idea on what Vegas has to offer for that. Penn State is going to have their first big challenge after their 3 cupcake games to open the season when they have to host Oregon. And Jeff Schwartz, eventual friend of the show, a friend of ours from Pac-12 Radio Day, says he's loving their offensive line. And as an offensive lineman, he obviously knows a thing or two. And as a homer for Oregon, he's been watching them. So that's going to be a fun battle of the trenches to really see what Penn State's line is made of for that. Then they really don't have much of a challenge, if you want to say, having to go to Iowa and then turning around after a bye. The big game for them is going to Ohio State on November 1st. This is it. This is the one that you need. They're going to have their whiteout against Oregon, I believe, to get that out of the way. So that's going to be a huge test for the Ducks. But that's the game that everybody has circled on their calendar. See what happens when you go to Iowa, take care of business, get rested up, and then go to Ohio State and show everybody what you're made of. Because after that, you're hosting Indiana, going to Michigan State, hosting Nebraska, and then having to finish the season at Rutgers. So you're assuming even if you give them Oregon and Ohio State as losses, 2 losses, you're getting into the college football playoff. And at this point, that's really it for these big name teams. Win and get in. Just get into the big dance and see what happens, because it's going to be a huge battle. And depending on where all the teams fall now in the bracket and who you get matched up against, if you have an quote unquote easier path, Penn State's showed that they can get to a semifinal game. Well, now let's get to the national championship and see what happens. Everybody's got that Ohio State game circled on their calendar this year.
No doubt. And I think that game will actually mean a lot more to Ohio State at that point of the year. I have Ohio State losing to Texas to start the whole season off. So I have Ohio State trying to get back into the mix a little bit. I could see them, probably maybe just 1 or 2 losses on their schedule to that point. But kind of like, hey, Ohio State's turning around right now. Oh, they got Penn State this weekend. James Franklin hasn't beaten Penn State in a really long time. And then Ohio State just kills them. I could totally see that happening too. But, just like USC, just like Miami, just like even a Texas from a couple of years ago, if Penn State football is good, the Northeast cares about football.
They do.
And that's good for the entire sport. So rooting for Penn State, I think they definitely have a chance. They did lose a lot. I mean, listen, just as a Giants fan, I mean, just losing Abdul Carter alone on defense. I mean, that guy literally played like probably 3 positions. I mean, you could put him anywhere. He was a game wrecker, like maybe one of the best defensive prospects in the last 20 years. So that's a big shoe to fill. But overall, they should be good, man. But yeah, I don't know. I don't ever see James Franklin kind of leaving there either. Like, he has such a long leash. And there's a lot of coaches in the Big Ten who have long leashes. Like, PJ Fleck. PJ, they have been, and I love PJ, media friendly coach. I'm a big fan of media friendly coaches. Amazing sound drop guy, like the row the boat stuff, like
SVP pulling for you in his pick segment every other week.
Yeah, you gotta love that. Romosh Ska or whatever they say there in beautiful Minnesota. But again, like, they've been so average for the last 10 years. They made a bowl game. They didn't even have 6 wins or 6 or 7 wins, and they got into a bowl game because of academic standards. Like, they were the highest in the country. But again, if you just have a decent program in the Big Ten and you're just showing up and hey, every once in a while you kind of win, there's a long leash in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
If you're a head coach.
If we're putting together one of those blank or the fields for Vegas this year, where you pick a conference or take the entire field, do you think the Big Ten edges the SEC to start the conversation of Big Ten versus the field, or is it still the SECs versus the field, if you're going to throw that out as a fun bet to make, like folks do for the NCAA tournament when there's just a couple great teams?
Yeah.
It might be, again, like we were saying, going for a three-peat. I mean, you got some big names up the top: Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon, just for starters, and then see who else comes out of there. That's going to be we had that battle in the top 4 of each conference, to use Tony Petitti's 4-4-4-3-3-2-4-5 model.
Tony Petitti. Yeah, I think I would go Big Ten versus the field. But now I'm saying this now and thinking back to last year's March Madness tournament, the SEC was at what they only had 3 or 4 teams. Or am I thinking baseball? I can't remember. Oh, it might have been baseball last year. Yes, baseball. They had so many teams make the College World Series, and I think only 3 teams maybe even sniff the regionals. So it's so hard to predict. But yeah, I would say, no, now I'm going back. No, I think the SEC. I would go SEC first the field now.
Well, conversely, you have Texas to make the college football playoff -330. Alabama's -200. LSU's +125. Ole Miss is +175. So those are their murderers row for the top 4. That's going to be competing for that.
Ole Miss, that's high on Ole Miss. Replacing a new quarterback. Ooh, interesting. And I love me some Lane, but wow.
So stats wise, Big Ten, I guess, is a little bit further ahead when it comes to the top 3 compared to the SEC top 3, if you want to do it that way. But it's not an easy conversation, which is great for both conferences. They're thrilled.
Yes, exactly. The ACC would love this. The Big 12 would love this. As entertaining I think the ACC and Big 12 are going to be on a week-to-week basis, just from a strictly matchup basis. I mean, it's just they're not even sniffing the SEC or Big Ten when it comes to just the top contenders. But hey,
no, and we'll talk about it anything can happen. Week. Clemson's going to be, I guess, thankfully for the ACC, the main team that we're focused on when we recap ACC Media Days and what happens for them. Conversely, for Penn State, if Clemson is good in the ACC, now you're talking. Now, of course, you'd want Miami to join them, Florida State, get a couple of bigger names, and Bill Belichick winning a couple games wouldn't hurt either. But
just imagine. I mean, we'll get into it next week, but wow, that is a possibility. Like it is. Like, are the UNC Tar Heels the SMU Ponies for the ACC?
And they did a pretty good job, mostly flying under the radar for ACC
the summer
media days and for the whole summer. Bill was open with reporters. He wasn't closed-minded. He didn't go viral for being short with anybody. Of course, he opened up a little bit more for how's your fullback positioning looking and questions like that aren't really asked too much of coaches that he loves taking 10 minutes to dive into, but he carried himself well to not go viral for the wrong reasons. We didn't happen to see a flash of a certain person that was sitting right next to him holding his hand while he was answering questions. They did great for North Carolina. They knocked it out of the park when it comes to their media days. So they've got to be thrilled in the ACC that there's not focus on things that aren't just is Clemson back, etc. It's a good week.
Yeah. Good week for sure. But yes, I mean, and also they're going to be on like the Hard Knocks version for Hulu. Should be very interesting, but we'll definitely get into that next episode. But yeah, he's been on his best Bill behavior, in a while, and that kind of scares me because when Bill's on his best Bill behavior and he's locked in, bro. But yes, he was very chipper at media days. He was very friendly to us at SiriusXM. I believe someone told me that he knew what a Comrex was. And I was like, that's awesome.
Perfect. Of course. He probably knows the inner workings of one too, how to fix the volume and change all the settings. He's ready.
He's like, go to New York Studio 4. Like, yeah. But he's it could be very interesting. But go back to the Big Ten, Johnny, who wins it all?
I'll tell you, it might be the Northeast in me shining through, not to be a biased East Coast host, but I mean, the chatter around Penn State, if they get through Ohio State or at least make it maybe another heartbreaker for them with a game-winning field goal or something, if they can stay in that game and one loss headed into the college football playoff, they've got to feel great. They've got to feel great about Drew Aller. And if he has some wide receivers that can help him out, this might be the year for James Franklin. As you mentioned, I don't think this is it for him. This isn't a make or break type deal because who else are you getting? Who are you going to bring in that's going to do a better job overall than James Franklin's done for Penn State over the past decade? I know you haven't gotten a national championship and you haven't been a laughing stock, but it's kind of been like, what heartbreak is going to befall us this season now? Who's going to be the team to rip our heart to shreds this time? But you're in the position to have your heart ripped out. Mm-hmm. Not many teams can even say that. So this might be the year that they do it. And if Ohio State doesn't get the quarterback play that they're looking for right out of the gate, maybe that'll have something to do with it. But, I mean, these teams have to have in their mind, much like baseball, you get hot at the right time at the end of the season, beat the team in front of you in the bracket, and just keep moving forward. Week to week, view it as your championship game like Texas did last year. Didn't work as perfect as they wanted it to, but that was their mindset, viewing each game as a national championship game. And we'll see what they can do. But if I have to pick a Big Ten team, it'll be Penn State for this season. East Coast bias.
The 5-7-0 in you.
Yeah.
The kid wants a creamery deal. That's
we're on too many people that are text chains and Facebook posts. You can't get away from it, man. This is the year. Penn State, baby. All right. I'll drink your Kool-Aid. I'll drink it this year again.
And to go back to your point, like who else are they going to have for James Franklin? Like we have to remember that Penn State was in probably the worst college football scandal of all time.
Yeah.
And rebuilding off of that, bringing in people from the state of Pennsylvania to come play there, I mean, was really hard, and he figured out how to do it. And and it's so hard to compare those two scandals, like to the USC situation with Reggie Bush in the late 2000s or early 2000s. But, I look at a team like USC and Penn State where it's kind of like, who's going to win that race to get out of that? And now we're only talking about championships. We're not talking about, do you remember what they paid Reggie Bush? And now Reggie Bush is getting his Heisman back. But if James Franklin could do that, obviously never forgotten what happened on that campus, but like you move past that. It's kind of like, hey, we are in the next era. We are in the next chapter of Penn State football. We're really dominating. Obviously haven't had it for years. But my champion, I agree with all of your points. Again, I said Aller could possibly be the best quarterback in the country, but I'm very excited about what Oregon bring back. Big fan of Dante Moore. Obviously, he hasn't had a ton of playing experience. He's kind of had a roller coaster career. Started at UCLA, a couple games there, moved around, but really has found himself in Oregon. I think Dan Lanning has recruited really, really well. If we're saying that any team in the Big Ten that kind of resembles an SEC team, I think the closest is Oregon. And we talked about his brother earlier today, DJ, but Mateo Uiagalelei. Put on the tape of him. He went against some of the best pass rushers or pass blockers in the country. And this kid is an animal. You could put him anywhere. I mean, if it wasn't for Abdul Carter, everyone would know this kid's name. Yeah. I'm expecting a huge year out of him, kind of like their schedule. And they proved last year, like, hey, it's hard to travel from the West Coast and, adjust. No, they won the Big Ten. They did. And they played really, really well. Dylan Gabriel last year was very exciting too. And I think what that Dan Lanning offense can do in Eugene could easily be done with Dante Moore. So I'm going to take the Oregon Ducks and represent the West Coast for the Big Ten.
It's going to be a fantastic game when Penn State and Oregon square off September 27th. We're getting it basically right out of the gate, and that's going to tell a lot about this season. Big Ten will have several of those games early on that will tell a lot about what their teams are. And again, might not matter at all because by the time we get to the college football playoff, they might look like completely different teams. So there's a little Big Ten breakdown for you after Big Ten Media Days. A quick toast or roast. We're getting to the end of July, and if anyone is a book nerd, that means July 31st, Harry Potter's birthday. Now he's several years, that's a handful of years older than us in the books. I think he's 2 or 3 years older than me. Okay. In the books. I think he was born in 86 or 87 or something, which means obviously a diehard Michael Jordan fan in that lore. They never mentioned that in the books, but of course you have to be growing up in that time period. Toast or roast Harry Potter. Were you a big Harry Potter kid growing up? Or the films, I guess?
Yes.
People are sometimes more into that than the books?
Yes, I was definitely more into the films than the books. I would say I'm House of Raven.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mr. Ravenclaw over here. They'd love
Ravenclaw. Okay. Well, it's only because that's the only one that came to my head. But I mean, growing up, I mean, those were like probably like the most technically advanced like movies that we could watch. I mean, when he went through the wall at the train station, insane. Every once in a while, people would say that I look like Ron. So that was kind of cool. So I say more toast than roast for sure. And I definitely I can't say I ever read a book, Johnny boy. I was more into football. Okay, I was more into football.
Division III football player, typical trope. We got it.
But yeah, more toast than roast. I know for fact where you're going with, but
well, my aunt worked for HarperCollins, which is the publisher for the Harry Potter books, and I was the same age as Harry Potter in the books, so they came out pretty consecutively with how old I actually was reading them. So 9, 10, 11, those are all coming out for the millennial generation. And back in those days, although there wasn't the obsession of the internet like there was, you had to read those pretty quick, because if you didn't finish them fast enough, somebody in school was going to spoil what happened because they already read it. So those are the books in life that I've read the fastest ever. We're talking 300-400, and then it obviously continued. There was the first 700-page book, the fourth book, Goblet of Fire, the first 800-page book, and we're 14, 15, 16 years old, pumping through these tomes of novels in 2 or 3 days, not sleeping. There were release parties at midnight where people would stand outside at Borders to make sure they got the book as fast as possible.
Shout out to Borders.
Pump through that, baby. 2 or 3 days you had to be done because somebody was going to come and ruin that Snape was killed, Dumbledore died. No spoilers. Who knows what was going to be released by your friends at recess or at lunch. You had to pump those through. So we were reading those books like animals back then. The fastest I've ever read books and consumed that information. My son's nursery is Harry Potter themed. We were going to go at Alice in Wonderland if it was a girl. We ended up having Lucas. So we have a nice Hogwarts mural on the wall, huge castle, different types of items to show what's going on in the Harry Potter world. Now, we don't go overboard. We're like normal Harry Potter fans. We went to Universal, obviously, and your jaw just drops because they've basically built the entire world that you could be immersed in. We're not those crazy people with the capes and the wands and we draw the line a little bit. We're normal Harry Potter fans.
You hear this, America? Yeah.
And we were those annoying readers that when the movies came out, we'd be like, they're nothing like the books at all. What are they doing? Ruining all these moments. Where's this? How come they changed that? So we're those assholes. But apparently when HBO redoes the show, they're going to follow the books to a T, although they've already decided to make one of the characters black who was not. So that's going to be great to see what they decide to change for the casting purpose of it all. But supposedly they're going to go straight by the books. We'll see if that happens and whether that scumbag J.K. Rowling is involved too much in the new shows. They pull a George R.R. Martin and maybe just don't even have her added to it. They just go page by page and see what happens. But huge Harry Potter buffs and couldn't have grown up at a more perfect time when the books were coming out right at the ages. And you had to pump through them, man, because I'm telling you, spoilers, you think the internet's bad. Spoilers in school where you just have to be on pins and needles that somebody's not going to be, hey, did you see? Wait, hold on a minute. I'm not done with that chapter yet. Wait. Okay. That's what we need to bring back in education. Somebody come up with another series where kids are just glued to these books and they have to finish them and you have to read them and you're not going to be on top of everything. You don't have to go to Reddit and get all the answers or ask ChatGPT. Hey, can you convert an 800-page book to 8 seconds worth of reading, please? I don't have the comprehension to read.
So we know that Harry was a hell of an athlete.
Sure.
I don't know what position he played in Quidditch, but I know he had a pretty good arm. What?
Seeker. Had to find the snitch every match.
Okay. So if Harry was a 5-star, I guess, would he be a receiver if he was a seeker?
He'd be a white running back. I
think.
Skinny, coach's son, first in, first out. Doesn't really have a lot, although he's incredibly wealthy in the bank. He just doesn't realize it, but he's the gritty guy, the Christian Hackenberg type quarterback. He's the running back that came Heisman. There'd be somebody screaming in the background.
Gotcha.
Heisman, Christian McCaffrey. That's what we're looking for Harry Potter. He'd be a perfect fit for that. Maybe not as svelte as Christian McCaffrey was, but similar to that type of mindset.
5-star running back. Where do you think his best fit is right now in the modern college football world?
You'd probably have to put him in a wildcat type of situation and go back to the well, running the triple option.
Yeah.
Really, really making it confusing whether or not he's going to be back there by himself. Run the Miami Dolphins type where they decided one season because of
Ronnie
injuries,
Brown, baby.
We're going to put everybody back there and see what happens. Like bring back the old school, forget about the Mike Leach passing and everything like that. Maybe even Big Ten. Just run the football, baby. Get him back there in the Wildcat formation, old Pac-12 style. Who knows where he's going to be? And he'd dominate because you just never know. He's the guy that your eyes are going to be on every play. So
the one thing I think
make everybody better.
The one thing I think we could agree on, though, Haggard, one of the best left tackles in college football.
Oh, no question.
Yeah.
They could just line up 3 offensive linemen. He'd take the whole left side. You'd never have to worry about getting sacked with him over there.
Nah, great kick step. He doesn't go down in the 3-point stance, but hell of a kick step, dude.
There you go. And if we kept going, we'd be on Reddit for people ripping us to shreds for not getting the positions right. That's going to do it for the Coast to Coast college football show on Sick Media. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at London Bridge. He's at Dan Lynch Spurts. We're also at Sick Pod CFB. You can find clips of the show throughout the week. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, you will find us. Pick up one of the Harry Potters if you haven't already. Page through those books. Forget about the movies. You and your films. Get back to the old school, page in hand. Happy birthday, Harry Potter.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Coast to Coast College Football on YouTube, X, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.